Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to share with you a few reflections. Europe is going through challenging times. The financial crisis that erupted in 2007 has turned into an economic paralysis first, and now into a social and human crisis, a human tragedy in many ways, that is threatening the very institutional foundations on which the European dream rests. High unemployment, public finances in serious disarray, slow and unequal growth overall, growing inequalities. These are all challenges that Europe needs to address through decisive action and comprehensive structural reform to turn the dream into reality. The dream of a prosperous, vibrant, fair society for all Europeans. Let me start by making a quick scan of the vital signs of the European economy. Last week I presented our latest OECD economic outlook during the OECD's Ministerial Council meeting. Our analysis shows that the euro area is likely to have entered a recession for the second time in 5 years. We expect a mild contraction in the area's GDP by 0.1%, so pretty close to flat, but slightly negative this year, which means some countries, of course, are in the red, because that's what averages tell you. Before growth picks up again to a little less than 1% in 2013. So nothing to write home about. Now, while the recession seems to be relatively mild, growth within the euro area is strongly divergent, with more robust rates in the north and a deep slump in the south. 17 million people are currently unemployed in the euro area. Youth unemployment is particularly acute in the southern countries, where, as you know well, it reaches up to 50% in some cases. Now, it is absolutely imperative to guide the euro area out of the crisis and to put the monetary union on a much stronger track. The only way to do so is by putting forward convincing and effective policies to rebuild trust. Trust in the financial system, trust in corporations, trust in government, trust within society. It is also fundamental to foster solidarity. Solidarity among the peoples of Europe. Solidarity is shown, for instance, in the EFSF, the ESM, and the policy efforts to hold the Union together in these difficult times. Now, to bring together trust and solidarity, we need appropriate policies. We need a euro area policy compact with a strengthened firewall. Now, we already have a fiscal compact, don't we? And we already have a firewall. Actually, we have about 3 firewalls. Then why is it that it's not working? Well, obviously, the fiscal compact is relatively young, recent. We are still in the process of ratification. The firewall, I asked in public for the mother of all firewalls. Well, we got maybe somewhat less than that, but then of course the IMF came up. So we have a number of instruments. You know, think about it, EFSF, ESM, and the IMF, and then of course the EIB and the ECB. Isn't it then a question of putting all this weaponry together and showing that they add up to a very, very large amount of money, and that the leaders are not only in possession of the weapon and with a loaded weapon, but that they're willing to shoot at everybody who messes up with any of the children in the family, you know. But what we have been saying for months now, actually for years since we started with the Greek situation, and we didn't ring fence it early enough, is all the reasons why we can't do things. why we can't use the institutions to its fullest, why we can't show the muscle, why we can't show the firepower, why we can't have the overwhelming power, as they say in the military, or why we can't show awesome capacity to deal with our own issues when we can, which is an enormous paradox and something that we should very seriously reflect on, because the markets are like, you know, the heat-seeking missiles, like weakness-seeking missiles, huh? And they go for the weakness. And if we show the weakness rather than show the power and the strength and the muscle, clearly what we'll get is a lot of missiles launched at us. Now, in order to attain these goals, solidarity and the return of trust and the return of the creation of jobs, etc., you really need stronger governance. The six-pack economic and budgetary governance package was especially welcome. They have substantially upgraded EU and national fiscal institutions. Now, normally, you know, I'm a Mexican, so I'm not from this part of the world. Although I've lived in Paris now for about 6 years and head of the OECD. Europe is always, you know, you plan a trip to Europe and you save money, and then you get on the plane and you get to Paris, and then they take you to Notre Dame, or they'll take you to Il Duomo in Italia, to the Cologne Cathedral, and then it's covered in scaffolding. And it's you know, they're making noises because you're going zzzz, and there's a lot of dust, and there's a lot of water coming in, and they're blocking half of the street, and there's a bottleneck for the traffic, and and you can't go in. If you go in, you can't see the windows of vitrals because you don't get a lot of light, and you know, it's very inconvenient. But then, you know, 3 years after that, you take off the scaffolding, and it's awesome. It's incredible. It's fantastic. It's one of the wonders of the world, you know. This is what Europe is about. Europe is always reinventing itself. Europe is always redesigning itself. Europe is always trying to strengthen itself. Europe will be better because of the things that have been done already and the things that are in motion. But the problem is timing, and the problem is, again, the convergence of the different policies, and to make them count and to stress the strengths and the positives. For the past few years, European politicians have been bashed for doing too little, too late. But credit must be given where it is due, and we should be fair in acknowledging that Europe has made important progress in rebuilding itself in response to the crisis. But key pieces of unfinished business remain. Government must implement reforms and stick to their commitments to make their economies more robust, to avoid another buildup of imbalances. Moreover, where it has long been lost, competitiveness must be restored so that economies can compete in today's globalized world. And that the answer of that question, which was made a while ago, where most of the people said outside the European region, will not be the case. That they will choose between Amsterdam or London or Paris or wherever, but that they will not choose the other part that said anywhere but, you know, in Europe. Now, more needs to be done regarding growth. Everybody talks about growth now. A crucial component of the Euro area policy compact was, of course, about growth, but we only remember the crisis part. Fiscal consolidation is indispensable, of course, but its composition is equally important. Emphasis must be placed on expenditure restraint, while ring-fencing pro-growth and employment-friendly expenditures, such as innovation incentives and active labor market policies. Where tax increases are unavoidable, their implementation must be confined to the least distortive instruments. VAT, for example, property taxes, green taxes, rather than more taxes on labor or on creating a job, an additional job, or taxes on the people who invest and create the opportunities and the jobs, therefore on corporate taxes. So lighten up on those, and if you want to be revenue neutral, you can compensate with the VAT, you can compensate with green taxes or with property taxes. And of course, in some cases, you don't want to be revenue neutral, you probably want to be revenue positive because you want to strengthen the public finances. But don't penalize the things that you want to do. Don't penalize jobs, because by putting more jobs on, or more taxes on the people, or on the payroll, or on social security contributions, etc., you make it more expensive and therefore less desirable and less probable that you will create an additional job. And the same thing in terms of investment in general. Now, there is much potential in many other countries for raising green taxes. That's a policy option that is good for public finances. It also serves a good environmental purpose, which we all share. But the only sustainable way of returning to growth and restoring debt sustainability is to increase productivity and remove barriers to labor market participation and job creation. At the same time, the liberalization of services and other policies that can strengthen domestic demand are crucial for those countries with large external surpluses. These goals can be achieved through ambitious reforms targeting product market regulation, labor market institutions, tax systems, education. As we say at the OECD, it's time to go structural. And not only because it's desirable to go structural, but because we ran out of options. We've exhausted our monetary policy room, we've exhausted most of our fiscal policy room. Those who have it use it, but not too many have it. And for many countries, not only that the fiscal room is finished, the time is finished. The markets have lost their patience and have lost their capacity for waiting, and therefore those have to focus on the adjustment. There's no other option. But the question is, going structural, it's education, it's competition, it's innovation, it's green growth. As I mentioned here, the liberalization of labor markets, the liberalization of product markets. It's about R&D. It's about the relationship between universities, research centers, private sector companies, and the markets. It's about taxes. It's about the health systems, etc. These are the things that will keep us moving. But one more thing. Typically you say, yes, but they take so long to produce results, and they have short-term costs. Well, our research, in our latest Going for Growth publication, which we just put out a few weeks ago, it suggests very strongly, the evidence suggests very strongly, that it doesn't take so long to produce results, and it's not so costly in the short term, especially if you're good at communicating what it is that you want to do. You can actually get a bonus of confidence in the markets if you give a medium-term context in which you are placing your short-term policies. Then you will get a reinforcement of your short-term policies. If you only take short-term measures with no medium-term context and no structural policies to talk about, then you will have 1 or 2 good market days and it will fade away again and again and again and again, as we have seen so many times. Now, these reforms have to be conducted at both the national and the supranational level. The Europe 2020 strategy and the measures taken in a number of countries since the crisis began are a good starting point. In order to transform the outlook, reforms will need to be far more ambitious. Now, take the case of the single market. This is the holy grail, okay? The potential of a European market of 500 million people is far from fully exploited. The European Union market remains fragmented, particularly in the services sector. And the fragmentation has left Europe with far too many small firms that cannot reach the critical scale needed to compete globally. For a truly integrated single market, our latest economic survey of the European Union identifies 3 challenges that would need to be tackled. First, by the way, we just presented our Euro area and our Europe area economic surveys only a few weeks ago in Brussels with Olli Rehn. And it mentioned a number of things, but among others, first, existing single market requirements need to be implemented effectively. We were surprised, for example, by how far some member states are lagging behind in applying EU standards. So there, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, just to stick to what there is in the books today. Here we have to look beyond the regulatory environment and look at the issues that are really thwarting cross-border activities. We propose an annual country-specific report to examine what is missing in law and in practice that is preventing the single market from working on the ground. Second, gaps in the single market need to be filled. Let me use telephone costs as an example. The cost of basic phone internet packages vary significantly, and there are parts of the EU where the fastest internet connections are not yet available. This issue can be addressed by better coordinating national regulators, investing in infrastructure, and through an effective competition policy. Competition, competition, competition. That will lead to innovation, innovation, innovation. That will lead to change. That will lead to lots of good things. Third, Europe needs a much more coherent and consistent framework to foster cross-border economic activity. Business regulation across countries needs to be more growth-friendly so that it becomes easier for companies to set up and to operate across the Union. Long-standing questions across cross-border corporate and indirect taxation also need to be resolved through better administrative cooperation. And let us not forget the ultimate purpose of these reforms: to foster inclusive social progress. And of course, economic is not an abstraction. It's about people. People need the perspective of a better life for themselves and a better future for their children. And here we have another challenge. The rise in inequality, therefore, is of great concern to us. We addressed these issues in last year's OECD report, Divided We Stand. The subtitle was Why Inequality Keeps Rising, which shows that the average income of the richest 10% of the OECD population is 9 times that of the poorest. Now, well, that's a number, okay? May sound too much or too little, whatever. The problem is, about 20 years ago, it was 7 times. The trend is in the wrong direction. Now, that's an average. There are countries, United States, UK, some others are 14, and my own country is at 25 times, and Brazil is at 50 times. That's not excuse. I mean, we're talking here about one of the objectives of the European dream, which is to make for more egalitarian societies. The more egalitarian societies are not at 9, they're at 7, but they were at 6 or at 5. So again, there's a deterioration. Our analysis shows that investment in skills is the most powerful tool to fight inequality. Without adequate investment in skills, people languish on the margins of society, technological progress does not translate into economic growth, and countries cannot compete in today's globalized economy. Skills have become the global currency of the 21st century. Now, doesn't it seem irrational that while unemployment runs high, employers cannot find workers with the suitable skills? We place great emphasis on this issue. Last week we presented our skills strategy in the context of our ministerial to help solve this skills mismatch, to facilitate the transition of youth from education to employment and to improve education efficiency. The message is all the more important in Europe, where so many countries are struggling with the consequences of globalization. Now, ladies and gentlemen, at such challenging times for Europe, let us not forget the dream that has bound so many Europeans together for generations. A shared dream of progress built on solidarity and built on mutual respect. For the last 51 years, the OECD has provided evidence-based policy advice that helped visions and dreams of ever deeper European integration come true. We now need to demonstrate our determination to persevere in taking difficult decisions, implementing structural reforms, showing solidarity, building trust. We, of course, have to deal with the short-term issues. We have to deal with Greece. We have to deal with Spain. We have to deal with Italy. It is not that we are putting those issues to the side, because if you don't deal with them, they will be in the way of the medium and long-term vision. But as I said before, they can be dealt with if we organize our own instruments, the institutions that Europe has built for itself, and we remove a lot of the constraints that we have ourselves produced, and we find ways in which we can use them, not ways of, or not reasons why we cannot use them. Success in revitalizing Europe and re-establishing its vigor in removing the scaffolding will undoubtedly provide a strong basis for advancing the European dream in pursuit of better lives for all Europeans. Thank you.